By the time Ethan Cole arrived at Docking Warehouse 12, the building was already screaming at him. Not metaphorically. Actually screaming. A six-legged customer service alien was shrieking at a forklift because someone had accidentally delivered 30,000 live aquarium crabs instead of pharmaceutical supplies. The crabs had escaped sometime during the night and were currently crawling through the ventilation system like they owned the place. Ethan walked past all of it without changing expression. "Morning," he muttered. One of the warehouse workers pointed upward. "There's one in the coffee machine." Ethan sighed. "Again?" Nobody answered. The Interstellar Shipping Corporation, known as Titan Unified Logistics, employed over 40,000 workers across 3 planets, 17 moons, and an unhealthy number of morally questionable asteroid facilities. Despite the impressive name, most of the company operated like a shopping cart rolling downhill without wheels. And somehow Ethan kept the disaster alive. Every morning he fixed conveyor belts nobody else understood. Every afternoon he repaired shipping scanners that exploded if touched incorrectly. Every evening he manually corrected inventory reports because management kept replacing experienced workers with budget-friendly automation, which usually meant broken robots named things like Cargo Buddy 4. Cargo Buddy 4 had caught fire 3 times that week. At this point, employees used it for warmth. Ethan stepped over 2 fighting reptilian dock workers and reached the main control terminal. The screen flashed red warnings like it was trying to emotionally threaten him. Shipment failure. Customs error. Temperature alert. Possible biohazard. He rubbed his eyes. "I haven't even had coffee yet." "You can't," someone yelled from across the room. "The crabs won." The warehouse groaned like a dying spaceship. A nearby alien worker leaned toward Ethan. "If you quit, this building collapses within hours." "Minutes," another corrected. "Honestly," a third added, "I'm not fully convinced Ethan is legally mortal." Ethan ignored them and started typing. Within seconds the conveyor systems restarted. Cargo routes corrected themselves. Error messages disappeared. The workers applauded sarcastically. One shouted, "Praise the emotionally exhausted human!" Another threw a protein bar at him like an offering to a tired god. That was when Lyra Vex appeared beside him carrying 2 energy drinks. Ethan nearly jumped. Lyra belonged to the Valari species, tall feline-like aliens with silver eyes, dark hair, and tails expressive enough to qualify as emotional subtitles. She worked in shipping analytics upstairs, which sounded impressive until you realized it mostly involved yelling at spreadsheets. Today she wore her usual dark corporate uniform, though somehow she still looked like she belonged on the cover of a sci-fi magazine instead of a collapsing warehouse. She handed him a drink. "You forgot breakfast again," she said. "You can tell? You attempted to repair a terminal using a wrench." "That's fair." Her tail flicked with amusement. Most humans found Valari intimidating. Ethan mostly found them confusing. Especially Lyra. She kept staring at him like he was either fascinating or clinically concerning. Possibly both. "You worked 32 hours this cycle," she said. 31. "That is not better. It is technically lower." She stared at him for several seconds before muttering, "Humans are deeply upsetting creatures." Ethan smirked. "Thanks. That was not a compliment." "Still counting it." One of the warehouse workers whispered loudly to another. "She likes him. She absolutely likes him. She brought him the expensive energy drinks." Lyra's ears twitched slightly. Ethan remained completely oblivious. An alarm suddenly blared overhead. Again. A robotic voice echoed through the warehouse. "Emergency all-staff meeting in Conference Hall B. Attendance mandatory." The entire warehouse groaned in pain. "Great," Ethan muttered. "Corporate theater." Conference Hall B looked exactly like every corporate meeting room in the galaxy. Fake smiles, terrible lighting, and chairs designed by sadists. Managers stood near the stage pretending they understood hard work. Executives checked messages while employees silently fantasized about asteroid impacts. At the center stood Darren Pike from HR. Perfect hair. Expensive suit. Smug expression permanently glued to his face like a manufacturing defect. Ethan already hated him. Darren smiled at the crowd. Tight and unified logistics values every employee equally. Several workers laughed out loud. Darren ignored them. He launched into a 20-minute presentation about improving efficiency, which apparently meant cutting staff while increasing workloads. By the end of it, even the air looked exhausted. Then Darren asked the sentence every employee feared. Any questions? Ethan raised his hand slowly. Lyra immediately whispered, Don't. Too late. Darren pointed at him with visible annoyance. Yes, warehouse division. Ethan stood calmly. We're operating with half the required staff, broken equipment, and unpaid overtime. We've submitted maintenance requests for months. Are you planning to fix any of it? The room went quiet. Several workers slowly leaned back like they expected an explosion. Darren gave the kind of fake corporate smile usually seen before lawsuits. Well, he said loudly, if warehouse work is too difficult for you, maybe this company isn't the right fit. A few executives chuckled. Ethan's expression hardened slightly. Darren continued, Let's be realistic. Your warehouse staff. Labor is replaceable. Extremely replaceable. Silence. Even the executives stopped smiling. Lyra's tail lashed behind her like she wanted permission to commit violence. Ethan looked around the room slowly. Years of overtime. Missed sleep. Broken systems. Ungrateful management. Then he smiled. And somehow that smile scared everybody more than yelling would have. Okay, Ethan said calmly. Good to know. Darren smirked confidently. Big mistake. Because Ethan suddenly looked relaxed for the first time in years. The meeting ended awkwardly, but whispers spread instantly across the warehouse. Oh no. He's smiling. That's never good. I think HR just activated the human villain origin story. Back at his workstation, Ethan sat quietly while alarms continued screaming around him. Then he opened a hidden folder buried deep inside his private drive. The label read, HR Disaster Insurance. And inside sat hundreds of files. Emails. Receipts. Voice recordings. Photos. And poetry so painfully terrible it could legally qualify as psychological warfare. Ethan slowly began drafting his resignation letter. The folder had originally started as a joke. 3 years earlier, Ethan had accidentally discovered that the executive printer on floor 9 automatically copied every scanned document into an archived backup server. Nobody in management knew this because nobody in management understood technology beyond changing wallpaper settings. Unfortunately for them, Ethan did. At first the files were harmless. Expense reports. Meeting schedules. Tax forms. One extremely aggressive complaint about cafeteria soup. Then one night, while repairing the CFO's office terminal at 2 a.m, Ethan found a document titled Moonlit Passion Draft Version 7. Naturally, he opened it. And immediately regretted having eyes. The poem began with, Your beauty strikes my soul like discounted lightning. Ethan stared at the screen for nearly 10 full seconds. Then he whispered, What the hell does that mean? The author turned out to be CFO Gerald Morrow. The recipient? Darren Pike from HR. That discovery alone nearly killed Ethan from laughter, but things somehow became worse. Much worse. Over the next few months, Ethan accidentally uncovered an entire secret relationship hidden inside executive communication servers. Romantic emails. Hotel bookings. Voice recordings. Terrible love poetry exchanged between two middle-aged corporate executives who apparently believed themselves to be forbidden lovers trapped inside a low-budget romance novel. And every single poem sounded like it had been written by a malfunctioning motivational speaker. One message read, Your voice dances across my heart like financially responsible jazz. Another said, When you entered the conference room, my pulse accelerated like unauthorized overtime. Ethan had laughed so hard he pulled a muscle in his neck. So he saved everything. Not because he planned revenge. Mostly because he knew someday he would need emotional support, and nothing healed psychological damage faster than Gerald Morrow attempting poetry. Now, sitting alone at his workstation, Ethan scrolled through the folder while chaos continued around the warehouse. A forklift crashed somewhere nearby. Nobody reacted. "Hey Ethan," one worker shouted. The sorting robot called another employee a coward and drove into a wall. "Put it with the others." "Already did." Ethan kept reading files. Hotel receipts from luxury resorts. Secret travel expenses disguised as leadership seminars. Voice messages that sounded like two divorced men trying to roleplay as seductive vampires. Then he found his favorite poem. He read it aloud quietly. "Your love warms me like microwave salmon beneath the stars." He physically recoiled. "Good Lord. You okay?" Ethan looked up to find Lyra standing beside his desk again. Her silver eyes narrowed slightly. "You made the face humans make before vomiting. I discovered literature crimes." She stepped closer, placing another snack bar beside him. "You skipped lunch too. You monitor me way too closely." "Yes." The honesty caught him off guard. Lyra leaned against the terminal, while her tail curled slowly behind her. Valari body language was complicated, but even Ethan could tell she seemed nervous. Which was strange. Normally she carried herself like someone fully capable of winning knife fights. "You are serious about resigning?" she asked quietly. "Pretty serious. You would leave because of Darren?" Ethan laughed once. "No. I'm leaving because this company thinks surviving abuse counts as teamwork." Lyra studied him carefully. "You know," she said softly, "humans confuse most species." "That sounds racist." "It is scientific." Ethan smirked. She continued, "Most workers collapse under prolonged stress. Humans become sarcastic. Then dangerous." "That's fair. You worked 32 hours while injured last month." "Technically, I was limping efficiently." "You repaired a cargo loader during a fire." "It was small fire." "It exploded." "Details." Her ears twitched with visible frustration. Then quieter. "You deserve better employment than this place." Ethan blinked. That sounded suspiciously sincere. For a moment neither of them spoke. The warehouse noise faded into background static while Lyra looked directly at him with an intensity that suddenly made Ethan aware she was standing very close. Like very close. Close enough for him to notice how good she smelled. Close enough to realize her tail had slowly wrapped around the leg of his chair. Oh. Oh. The realization hit him like a falling refrigerator. "She's flirting with me," he thought. Several months late. Fantastic. "You could stay with me temporarily," Lyra said casually. Ethan almost choked on air. "What? You mentioned your apartment lease ends soon. You remember that? You complain loudly during inventory audits." "That's honestly fair." She crossed her arms, pretending confidence despite obvious nervous tail movements. "My apartment has extra space." Are you asking me to move in with you?" "Possibly. You're being weirdly calm about this." "I am panicking internally." "That actually helps somehow." For the first time all day, Ethan genuinely smiled. And Lyra immediately noticed. Her ears lifted slightly. "Dangerous. Very dangerous." Before Ethan could answer, his terminal flashed another corporate announcement. "Mandatory executive appreciation event tomorrow." He stared at it blankly. Then deleted the message without opening it. "Nope," he muttered. He opened his resignation draft instead. Short. Professional. Polite. Which somehow made it more threatening. Then he attached the folder. Every email. Every receipt. Every horrifying poem. He hesitated only briefly before pressing send. The message went company-wide. Every department. Every executive. Every employee. Sent successfully. For 5 full minutes, nothing happened. Warehouse workers continued moving cargo. Managers yelled about deadlines. Cargo Buddy 4 drove into another wall. Then suddenly a scream echoed from the executive floor. A loud one. Another followed. Then multiple voices shouting simultaneously. Someone ran through the hallway carrying a tablet like it contained classified war information. A manager nearly tripped over a chair while yelling. "Who sent this?" Employees checked inboxes. One warehouse worker opened the attachment. He read silently for several seconds. Then his entire body folded over from laughter. "Oh no!" he wheezed. "Oh, this is bad." "What?" "The CFO writes poetry." Nearby workers immediately crowded around. Another employee read aloud dramatically. "Your forbidden touch electrifies my tax-adjusted soul." The entire warehouse exploded. People screamed laughing. One alien worker fell out of his chair. Another started pounding the table chanting, "Read another one." Someone else grabbed a clipboard and began performing the poems like theatrical monologues. Ethan leaned back calmly while absolute corporate destruction unfolded around him. And beside him, Lyra stared with open admiration. "You archived evidence for years," she said slowly. Ethan shrugged. "Humans are persistence predators." Her tail flicked excitedly. "That is the hottest thing anyone has ever said to me." By the next hour, Titan Unified Logistics had completely stopped functioning as a company. Technically, the building was still standing. Emotionally, however, it had died. Nobody was working anymore. The warehouse crew had transformed the lunchroom into a live theater performance dedicated entirely to mocking executive romance poetry. Someone dimmed the lights. Someone else brought snacks. One reptilian dock worker climbed onto a table using a mop handle as a dramatic stage prop. Then he cleared his throat with deadly seriousness. "Your gaze penetrates my spirit like premium dental coverage." The cafeteria detonated into hysterical laughter. One alien literally slid out of his chair wheezing. Another worker pounded both fists against the table screaming, "Not the dental coverage line!" "Oh stars!" someone gasped. "There's more." There was so much more. An employee connected his tablet to the cafeteria projector, which turned out to be the single worst decision in corporate history. The poems appeared 30 feet tall across the cafeteria wall. Employees cried laughing. One dramatic warehouse supervisor read another message aloud like he was performing ancient royal poetry. "Every moment without you feels like unpaid vacation leave." A worker in the back screamed. "He thought that was romantic? This man has children. He manages finances." Meanwhile, emergency HR emails began flooding everyone's inboxes. "Do not share confidential materials. Please delete the attached files. Unauthorized distribution will result in disciplinary action." That only encouraged people. Employees immediately began forwarding the files harder. Somebody made commemorative posters. Someone printed t-shirts. Within 40 minutes, a cargo pilot had already turned one poem into a dance remix. Ethan watched the collapse from the edge of the warehouse while calmly packing his belongings into a single cardboard box. Which honestly felt insulting after 6 years of employment. "That's all I own," he muttered. Nearby, Cargo Buddy 4 drove past carrying 27 toilet seats for reasons nobody understood. The robot paused beside Ethan. Then in a distorted mechanical voice said, "Love is temporary. Inventory is forever." Ethan stared. "You know what? Fair enough." Across the warehouse floor, executives sprinted back and forth like frightened prey animals. Darren Pike looked especially terrible. His perfect hair had collapsed. His tie hung loose. Sweat poured down his forehead while he shouted into 3 communication devices simultaneously. "No, it was fabricated. Yes, obviously those receipts are fake. Who uploaded the poem's slideshow?" Another scream echoed from the executive elevator. Everyone turned. The CFO's wife had arrived. And she looked ready to legally redefine violence. Gerald Morrow stumbled behind security guards trying desperately to calm her down while avoiding eye contact with literally everyone. It did not help that workers had begun reciting the poems whenever he walked by. One employee bowed dramatically. "Your lips taste sweeter than tax exemptions." Gerald nearly broke into a sprint. The warehouse exploded laughing again. Someone started rating the poems numerically like sports judges. Budget-friendly diamonds gets a 7. Microwave salmon deserves prison time. No, another worker argued. Emotionally supportive spreadsheet is clearly his masterpiece. Even Lyra was laughing now, though her species usually found human humor deeply confusing. She leaned against Ethan's workstation watching the catastrophe with open fascination. Your species weaponizes embarrassment, she said. We're very adaptable. You destroyed 2 executives without raising your voice. I also included receipts. That's important. Her silver eyes lingered on him again. Longer this time. It was becoming increasingly difficult for Ethan to ignore how attractive she was. Especially now that she looked genuinely impressed by his ability to commit psychological warfare through organized documentation. Apparently competence was sexy. Who knew? You are leaving now? She asked softly. Before somebody remembers I technically caused this. A wise survival strategy. Ethan picked up his cardboard box and looked around the warehouse one last time. For a brief moment, the place almost felt sentimental. Then Cargo Buddy 4 crashed into a vending machine and caught fire again. Never mind, Ethan said. I regret nothing. He headed toward the exit while chaos continued behind him. Employees cheered as he walked past. One worker saluted dramatically. Another yelled, The legend walks among us. A third shouted, Send us the extended poetry cut. Ethan raised a hand without turning around. The massive warehouse doors slid open with a mechanical hiss, revealing the neon skyline outside. Endless traffic lanes glowed between skyscrapers while cargo ships crossed the night sky overhead. For the first time in years, Ethan felt strangely calm. Then footsteps followed behind him. Lyra. Of course it was Lyra. She caught up beside him, tail swaying slowly behind her. You didn't say goodbye. I assumed you'd hear the explosions and figure it out. That is reasonable. They stood together outside the building while distant screaming continued inside corporate headquarters. At one point somebody inside yelled, Why is there a poetry meme account already? Ethan smiled faintly. Then Lyra spoke quietly. You know, Valari females study humans extensively. That sounds mildly threatening. It is mostly academic. Mostly? She ignored that. Humans are physically weaker than many species. Shorter lifespan. Fragile biology. She paused. But you continue surviving impossible environments through stubbornness and spite. That's our brand. Her tail brushed lightly against his arm. Intentional this time. And, she admitted carefully, many Valari find that attractive. Ethan blinked. So your species is attracted to exhausted idiots? Yes. That explains a lot actually. For once, Lyra laughed openly. Not polite laughter. Real laughter. And Ethan realized he wanted to hear that sound more often. A comfortable silence settled between them while traffic lights reflected across the street below. Then she looked directly at him. You embarrass powerful enemies publicly, resigned calmly, and walked away while they destroyed themselves. Her ears lifted slightly. That was extremely attractive. Ethan nearly dropped the cardboard box. That's weirdly specific. We value tactical dominance. I leak terrible poetry. Exactly. Her tail wrapped gently around his wrist. Ethan looked down at it. Then back at her. So, he said carefully, when you offered me a place to stay earlier, I was hoping you would say yes. Oh. Brilliant response, Ethan. Absolute master of romance. Lyra seemed amused by his sudden inability to form sentences. You become quieter under emotional stress, she observed. I'm trying very hard not to embarrass myself. You already destroyed an executive hierarchy today. I doubt awkward flirting will defeat you. That's optimistic. His pocket terminal suddenly exploded with notifications. Incoming calls. Messages. Employment offers. One executive message simply read, Please call US before legal gets involved. Another said. What would it take to bring you back? Then a final message appeared from an unknown corporate recruiter. Name your salary. Lyra glanced at the screen. Then slowly smiled. It appears, she said, you were not easily replaceable after all. 3 days after Ethan resigned, Titan Unified Logistics entered what investors later described as catastrophic operational confusion. Warehouse 12 alone suffered 11 routing failures, 4 docking accidents, 2 inventory riots, and 1 incident involving genetically modified shrimp escaping into ventilation systems. Again, without Ethan manually correcting shipment errors, the company's automated systems immediately began destroying themselves. Entire cargo routes vanished. Customs reports duplicated endlessly. One delivery ship accidentally received 17,000 office chairs instead of medical supplies. Nobody understood why. Mostly because nobody realized Ethan had secretly been fixing hundreds of system errors every single day for years. Executives finally opened his archived workflow logs. The discovery horrified them. Ethan had been repairing broken automation manually, rewriting shipping algorithms during lunch breaks, correcting payroll errors, maintaining inventory systems, fixing executive mistakes quietly before clients noticed. One executive reportedly stared at the reports for 20 minutes before whispering, "Oh no, he was the infrastructure." Meanwhile, Darren Pike's career died publicly and violently. The HR director became the official corporate scapegoat almost overnight. Employees celebrated the announcement like a planetary holiday. Warehouse workers printed his leaked poetry onto coffee mugs. Someone turned, "Your love electrifies my tax-adjusted soul," into a motivational poster. Another employee sold merchandise online. The CFO retired unexpectedly after his wife won what lawyers described as an emotionally spectacular divorce settlement. The poem somehow leaked outside the company shortly afterward. Then things became truly terrible. Because the internet discovered them. Within a week, romantic disaster compilations appeared across social media platforms. Dramatic voice actors performed readings. Musicians remixed them. University students analyzed them ironically. One famous comedian read, "Your passion burns hotter than microwave salmon," then laughed so hard during a live broadcast that he fell out of his chair. The quote became immortal. Months later, people still referenced microwave salmon during terrible dating attempts. Ethan, meanwhile, was having the best month of his life. His new employer, Orion Interstellar Freight, recruited him almost immediately after the scandal exploded online. Apparently, companies valued employees capable of collapsing corporate leadership using organized email folders. Who could have guessed? The salary alone nearly gave Ethan emotional whiplash. Luxury apartment. Shorter hours. Actual benefits. A coffee machine that didn't contain seafood. Most shocking of all, people listened when he spoke. During his first week, an executive asked, "What systems would improve warehouse efficiency?" Ethan had nearly blacked out from confusion. "You're asking my opinion voluntarily?" The executive looked concerned. "Yes? Weird." Orion employees treated humans differently than Titan had. Apparently, Ethan's resignation stunt had spread through corporate circles fast enough to become workplace legend. Humans suddenly developed a reputation. Persistent. Dangerous. Petty under pressure. Capable of surviving impossible workloads fueled entirely by caffeine and revenge. One alien manager described humans as emotionally unstable endurance specialists. Ethan considered that fair. The biggest improvement, however, arrived 2 weeks after he moved into his new apartment. Lyra showed up carrying 3 bags and a plant. Ethan opened the door slowly. "Are you moving in?" "Yes." "You didn't warn me. You would overthink it." "That's completely true." She stepped inside calmly like she already belonged there. Honestly, she kind of did. Their relationship developed strangely fast after that. Apparently, surviving corporate warfare together accelerated intimacy. Ethan learned Valari females expressed affection through physical closeness and aggressive honesty. Which explained why Lyra regularly said things like, "You are attractive when sleep-deprived and angry," or, "The way you organize spreadsheets triggers biological responses in me." Human flirting suddenly felt weak by comparison. One night while cooking dinner together, Ethan accidentally burned garlic bread badly enough to trigger the smoke alarm. Lyra watched him battle smoke with a kitchen towel for several seconds. Then she sighed dreamily. "You would survive primitive warfare. That's somehow the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." She kissed him immediately afterward. Apparently competence remained sexy. Who knew? Back at Titan Unified Logistics, the company continued collapsing in slow motion. Executives attempted hiring replacements for Ethan, but none lasted longer than 2 weeks. One employee quit after seeing the system manuals. Another reportedly cried in a storage closet. Cargo Buddy 4 somehow achieved partial self-awareness and began insulting management openly. Nobody stopped it. Then came the funniest moment of all. 6 months after Ethan resigned, he received an official corporate message from Titan. He opened it while sitting on the couch beside Lyra. The subject line read, "Consulting opportunity." Ethan laughed immediately. "No way." "What is it?" Lyra asked. "They want me back." She nearly dropped her drink laughing. The message itself sounded desperate. Titan executives admitted operational failures had cost them millions. Employee morale remained catastrophic. Somebody had apparently hacked the company lobby screens so the leaked poems played every morning at shift change. They offered Ethan an absurd consulting contract. Flexible hours. Executive authority. Full apology. Ethan read the entire thing silently. Then smiled slowly. Lyra saw that smile and immediately looked concerned. "That expression usually precedes psychological violence." "Correct." Ethan opened the reply window. Then attached a single file. Moonlit_passion_draft_version 7. The microwave salmon poem. Nothing else. No message. No signature. Just the attachment. Sent. Lyra stared at him for 3 full seconds before collapsing against the couch laughing. "You rejected a corporate contract using poetry warfare. I believe in consistency. You humans are unbelievable creatures. Yet you moved in with one. That was my first mistake. First? I planned several more." Ethan pulled her closer while city lights glowed outside the apartment window. For the first time in years, no alarms screamed at him. No executives demanded impossible fixes. No warehouse disasters waited around the corner. Just peace. Well, mostly peace. Because his terminal suddenly buzzed again with another incoming job offer. Then another. Then another. Lyra glanced at the growing notifications. "You accidentally became famous," Ethan groaned. Across the galaxy, employees still quoted the leaked poems whenever management became unbearable. The lines survived longer than the executives themselves. And somewhere inside Titan Unified Logistics, Cargo Buddy 4 reportedly continued roaming the warehouse halls repeating, "Love is temporary. Inventory is forever."